Okay, Nixiko, Nistu, Nidaniko, Mokoyo, Sokoyi. I just greet you a little bit in my Blackfoot language. And I told you my name is Mokoyo Sokoyi, which means Wolf Trail or the Milky Way. I, um, I, my English name or IRS name is Theda NewBreast. And I welcome you to the Native Wellness Institute's Power Hour. We're in our 13th week, which is amazing. We have a very large team who gathers every day, so I'll be with you for the next hour or so. And we gather because we try to bring something that really ignites the teachings of our ancestors and is positive, productive, and proactive. Our team always promotes any kind of wellness. And so today's topic is that our DNA, our ancestors that lived way before us, our 5, 6 generations back historically, our ancestors dictate our compassion healing. And so I'd like to spend some time with you in the next hour just sharing with you some stories that we hope helps with your healing because it's a very healing time right now. I was just saying, this sign that my mother asked me to make the other day. Um, it just says all the mamas heard you, George Floyd, when you were calling for your mother. It's almost like every mother, myself included, every grandmother, every auntie, every sister across the world heard you. And so, this was just the sign that my mother told me that she wanted to take a knee to get down, 81, 81 years and a half old, get down on a knee and hold this sign. So I just wanted to put those thoughts out there, as we start. And my heart feels a lot of love. It feels a lot of caring right now. So I might, have some tears. This is not a death presentation or any of those kinds of things that sometimes we get from the outside world. So I wanted to just kind of dive in and start with a couple of thoughts. When I first heard people talk about epigenetics, and I'd heard other words, blood memory. I had heard other words that my mother once again would always say, when times are tough, that you have to call on your sinew. Your sinew inside of your body. That she would just say, call on your sinew. We'd get some kind of challenge, or would she was really asking us, when we were raised that we were going to college, we were raised that we were going to the university. There was no if, ands, or buts about it. And, this is like in the 60s, when no one even graduated from high school. But she would say, call on your sinew. And so then I think about, the times, just even within this pandemic, Native Wellness Institute, choosing to come to you every day for an hour. What does that mean, when we call upon our ancestors, or we imagine all of our ancestors, because I always, like, my grandma's right here, my grandpa's here. My Uncle Gerald's here. My Aunt Rita's here. My Aunt Carol. I feel like my dad is always just right over here, lifting me up and giving me, certain wisdoms and giving me the boost, of the things that need to be taken care of. So I wanted to start with, thinking about, the wisdom that comes. We know a lot of the historical traumas have been triggered, and we know a lot of the historical stuff. We know that the ACE, the Adverse Childhood Effects Assessment, looks at all of these traumas. So I want to talk a little bit about the resiliencies, or the things that you should consider during this time in your transformation. We're all given this holy time during this pandemic, and now, since this plea for social justice, this plea for really looking at, how a lot of people of color, are a lot of, the history of slavery, the history of the tribes. And if we go to other continents, we look at the Aboriginals' history in Australia. We look at how, the Maori migrated from Hawaii, and then landed on Oteria. If we just go, even to Africa, and look at all of the tribes of Africa, and how they themselves are resilient, and how they themselves maintain. It's an incredible wisdom that is coming to an awareness. And then our earth is, our earth is like, yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo. Our earth is really talking to us. I get up every morning, and the way that I wake up is, I head out in the woods, and I go for a walk for an hour or two sometimes. I The birds are even singing louder. They're singing more. There's other, the grouse, there's lots of babies. The woodpeckers are, the beavers are swimming, the loons. There's just this incredible, and the air is so fresh. It feels like the air is just incredibly fresh that I'm breathing. And I was thinking, out there, wherever you are, on our continent now, you're probably seeing our earth is also transforming and becoming more vibrant. There's I don't know, it's just like a beautiful thing is happening. So so let's think about a couple of things. I was The resiliency of when we were starting to find out who we are as our authentic self. I think of incidents where, and I thought of one story one time, when it was the first time that I felt some cultural pain. I didn't understand poverty, because I didn't know what that was. I had never understood, because I never thought I was poor. I mean, even though we didn't have much money, I just never, I grew up with grandparents that were all grandparents, and one of them was of European descent. I grew up, all of my aunties were my other mothers, man. And my other uncles, they were all my fathers. So I grew up rich. I was rich, in that richness. So, but I remember, when we moved off the reservation, and I guess it's kind of a starting point about how resilient and how much wisdom we have. Survival first, for survival, and then to reclaim who we are, and then to thrive. It was, we had moved to, I guess, what people would call the ghetto in Berkeley on 7th Street. And I was very, I was very young, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. And I remember, and this was like a happy memory, because like everybody was African American, and then there was some sprinkled tribes, and we lived in this upper duplex, and we were our mother was beginning to get into the workforce, and but I just remember going out, and I felt safe. I was, I was surrounded. All my friends were all African American, and then I started to meet other um, they would call them Chicanos, and but I remember going out and with friends, and I just thought it was the greatest thing to go into. Would sneak into the Baptist church, and I would see people praying and people getting the Holy Ghost, and it was just, I just I was just this little Indian kid, kind of, and I was just going, oh my God, it was just like a world that I just thought was so beautiful. It was just, I was seeing everyone. They were different than I was. They weren't Blackfoot or tribal, but they were just beautiful. My first best friend was, and her name was Halloumi. And I remember going to her house, and they only used chopsticks. I'd never seen chopsticks in my. And I just remember her, you know, um, her family. I had to learn to. That's how I learned to use chopsticks. And then I remember going to my friend Ruth. Where they used. And I remember I didn't know it. It was just I was experiencing the world, and I'm just, and the resiliency that I had already been implanted in me was there. I remember going to Ruthie's house, and Ruthie, they had brought green chili, and it was very hot, and I didn't had never experienced hotness. And I remember being at the table, and I took a bite of the taco, and and all I could do is run over to the sink and try to pour water down my throat. And I remember her mom was so compassionate. She made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but it was like, they out of love, there was just there was like this openness to experience other cultures. But I remember, and I'm just starting in that place because I'm going to be visiting with you about our resiliency. It's in our DNA, and it's in us. I remember being with my friends, and like we're fourth grade, fifth, and their parents were visiting, and I saying something. They were talking about Indian people. They were saying, those Indians, they get their first paycheck and they don't come back, or those Indians, man, they just get drunk. They were just saying all these things about, and then I didn't know that that was an opinion of tribes. The drunken Indian, or they always don't come to work on Monday, or they leave on Friday. And that was my first, my recollection of when there was a shame to be who I was, and I was listening to it, and I could hear what they were saying, and that was not my experience. In my DNA, in my sinew, I had never had that experience of my people being just that. So I remember they all of a sudden they realized, yes, I was the little girl there, and yes, I was a tribal girl. Yes, I belonged to a tribe. And they turned to me, and they go, "Oh, sorry, we're sorry. Uh, you're Native American, aren't you?" And I just remember freezing, like freezing in that moment. And then I came up with a different answer, because at that moment, all the things they were saying, it shamed me so badly. I said, and I remember stumbling, and I said to them, no, I'm Filipino. I think I grabbed another culture, I grabbed another race, and I said I'm Filipino. Because I didn't want them to question me, because I couldn't answer. But then after I said that, I remember walking home, and I was saying to myself, I'm not Filipino. I'm not Filipino. And I just remember thinking about my grandma, and my grandpas and my uncles and the love of my mom and my dad. I was one of those breastfed kids. I was breastfed till I was way older. I used to run outside and come back in and lift mom's shirt up and nurse a little and then run back outside. So then as I got home, I had kind of forgot. The incident disappeared, and I again had this wisdom that where I belonged and what I was about. So I wanted to start with that because one of the things that's happening in our society right now with the pandemic and with us all staying home, and the majority of us we're going through different cycles, and then now with seeing the strife that's happening, the social justice and this revolution of racial tension, we might get triggered. And one of the triggers that's happening, you'll go back to memories. That's why we're getting in touch with people we haven't in a long time. We'll remember people that have passed on. We'll memory and a story is because we're given this gift of time is reflection. And that's kind of the wisdom. One of the wisdoms that comes in our DNA, and one of the wisdoms that comes in indigenous wisdom, is that we reflect and then we bring it together to make some kind of sense for us and in our new transformation. So I wanted to begin there. Um, and I just like to say, a lot of my experience working with diversity work began like in the '70s in California, and I remember she was a black Indian named Carmela Wool, and Carmela and I used to do training up and down California. There was like 87 rancherias right then, and we were doing diversity training. And one of the beginning points, and so I was just going to share that process with you and share that question with you. And it really helped the dialogue begin to happen around the action that we need to take with some to promote the healing. And it's this wisdom. So at the beginning of our session, would always ask this question, and you can answer in your own head and then think about it and then ask it with your family. We would ask, if you weren't the race that you are now, like if you weren't this race, what would be your second choice? So think about that for a moment. Just what would be your second, and and then and it might take some time. We may not just come up with the answer. You might reflect with your family, and it might come later. Second part of that question was, okay, so if you weren't the race that you are now, what would be your last choice? What would be your last choice? And so that was in order to do some healing of the racism, the sexism, the ageism, the isms, whatever that last choice is. The way that you heal is to begin to develop a relationship with what that last choice is, and you know that answer. Um, for So then I remember asking. Of course, we're with a bunch of Indians, and they were trying to, because Indians have isms, and there has to be some healing of some of the isms, and so we were asking that question, and I remember a woman coming up to me afterwards. It's mainly tribal people, but she said, excuse me, could you tell me?" Because her last choice was her last choice was a pygmy, and she didn't know any pygmies or where to go develop a relationship. But she was sincere. She was sincere. She was like, that was her last choice, but she didn't know how she was going to develop a relationship. So because sometimes the isms are the softening and the coming together of our heart is when we go out and we start to look at where we might have some judgment, and then that's when we have to put our hand halfway across the table and to have some resolution to it. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, and as an example, is, this learning, the how do we learn compassion, and how do we continually, especially during this time, work on our own healing. And one of the blessings is, I our elders worked on this for years, and I'm just gonna like hold it up. Um, and I'm gonna kind of use it as a framework because Charlene Plume, Prairie Chicken, gave me this. It's here it is in our language, and then here it is in our in English. And these are actually the values that we're trying to, from birth, from our rites of passage all the way up to from birth to grave. And so I'm gonna speak to each of them, with some stories, because I'm not, gosh, I just don't want to judge anybody. So I want to speak in stories, because I think right now our hearts are opening to hear them. So I'll start with the first value, and this is the wisdom that and she's an old Nitsitapi, old horn, that we have to work on, is our spirituality. And I guess these tears are, there's so much wisdom coming to us as we spend time with our families, as we spend time with our loved ones, as we have forgiveness, if we do hold any resentments or past, there's so much in that value of spirituality. So a way to talk, that I'd like to begin to talk about it, is when you're pregnant, and especially if it's like your first child, or in our family, there'd be like 13 children, 10 children. Our family's small. There's 5 of us, so we're small. We were just count. I have 64 first cousins, and then I have hundreds of second cousins. And I was just thinking about that. But the spirituality, think about the bringing back that time when a woman is in gestation for that 9 months, how precious she is, how we have to surround her. There's wisdom, how we have to surround her with all of the loving safety nets, that she eats good, that she's surrounded by just love and by the relatives, and that she's still it and that's in European, or the way this world is, this mainstream world, they treat pregnancy as a sickness. You gotta, like, you gotta go in, it's almost like treated differently, when actually that is the wisdom, is the life giver at that time, has 2 spirits in her. You get a heartbeat at 26 days. At 26 days, you get a heartbeat, little tiny heartbeat. There's 2 spirits inside of that woman. So she's actually a very powerful person. And that first value of spirituality, the when during gestation, during that 9 months, that of singing to that baby, talking to that baby, because that's the inside, they can hear your voice, they hear the voices around them. That's why when they come out, the first look they'll go to, when they hear their mother's voice, because they already know what that voice sounds like, they'll go with love, that unconditional love. That's the wisdom. They'll look towards their mother. And when they hear the father, when they hear the other grandparents and the auntie's voice, it's just automatic. There's like an intuition. They go towards that love. And that's why we take care of the umbilical cord. That's why we have placenta ceremonies. That's why we have, the original dream catcher was made way before to be put on the cradle board to protect that child. I'm just speaking of, some wisdoms. So think about that, how and then right now, have you noticed that yes, indeed, there is this cycle. We've got these deaths, and we'll be coming through. The solstice is on Saturday. Saturday, I think it's around 3:30 Mountain Standard Time, is the actual powerful time, and we're going into it. This is Wednesday. It's a couple days away, so it's a natural cycle. Those that are vulnerable, that aren't doing well, they'll sometimes die then, or they'll pass on. But at the same time, there's all of these babies being born. And so, in our wisdom, think about just paying attention to all the babies being born, paying attention to all the 1 year olds that are just taking their first steps, and really paying extra attention to the 2 year old who's trying to say no to everything and just trying to find their world around them. It's like to our younger people. And right now the wisdom is, when you're paying attention to them, your spirituality, your this value, is it grows, and it reminds us that maybe that our life on earth, if it's 100 years, that our time here is just to feel love, to feel joy, and just to hold them, and just to be around them, and to listen to them, and to guide them. I mean, the greatest gift in the world is when you can help someone take their first steps when they're about 1 year old. I I guess I'm just sharing things with you that just feel so good. Now, this and thinking about our young people. And this spirituality. The other day, I saw, we're having social distancing gatherings of celebration. Graduations. That celebration of when they do so much, accomplishments, that we need these markers in that spiritual way. Um, so I wanted to say a couple comments about the wisdom of rites of passage. So the rites of we're going through a rite of passage right now. Everyone's saying this, what happened since March, April into now. We're in a rite of passage, and you have to celebrate that. We're in a rite of passage of transforming, and even with the healing with the gift of what George Floyd gave us, his sacrifice. And now what we're paying attention to is that this spirituality is a mender, and it can bring everyone back together. And I guess that's why I have a vulnerable heart, and I'm just sharing some of this with you now. Now, and I'm gonna kind of go through what I this little. It's not like it's not like a little cheat sheet. I always carry this because they gave it to us, because this is the wisdom of our elders. So the second one is kindness to others, and to think about the wisdom of kindness. And we hear it a lot, in acts of kindness. We hear sometimes our mentors will say you have to be kind with people, in giving them something symbolic, but they shouldn't know about it, just giving to them. So acts of kindness, and so that has to start some of the wisdom. And I hope that you're beginning with the self-care, and with yourself now. You're starting to treat yourself kind. You're starting to Find out what keeps you balanced and what keeps you whole. I mean, like I was just thinking, a lot of people want to go fishing now. A lot of people want to go hiking now. A lot of people want to go camping now. They're getting out and being with nature, just that kindness to yourself. That kindness where you just be, just I have found a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my family are just saying, go sit out by the water and stare at the water and and feel that peace and feel that inner strength of the water. So this kindness to others. So think about that. How is that wisdom? How do we play it out? I have to. I hate to be old school and kind of go like this. Remember when we were little kids and we would wipe our wipe our snots on our sleeves and stuff. So this kindness. So I want to share a story of kindness and how when you put that kindness out, it comes back tenfold. We were just looking in our families, especially around here, where everyone is looking after everyone. And so we're really looking after families that maybe don't have much, and maybe they don't have the income anymore, and we're checking on them, and we're bringing them food, and it's just like the other day there was a mass our reservation because we're in lockdown. There was just this kindness in which tribe and our fire department came and brought everyone. They brought them cheese and meat and eggs and vegetables and fruit and bananas and peaches and plums, and just bringing, and they drove them to all the elders around here. They drove and they brought them to the front door, and just and kindness, because they really don't want anyone to go off a reservation, or they don't want anyone to leave and maybe bring the infection back. But these kind gestures, I just over and over. So think about that wisdom. So sometimes even the words that you're saying, kindness and giving to everyone, how that what words do you use telling someone that you did a good job, that you're brilliant, that you're smart, that you're beautiful, just looking at all of the kindness that you use with your words. I One of the other acts of kindness that I see in our wisdom, that's in our DNA, and it helps with our healing, is everybody is taking time to make something. Whether they're cooking for people, whether they're working on an outfit, whether they're putting, beading something, whether they're fixing their house, whether they're growing a garden. It's just amazing. So many people are just trying to grow some zucchini, grow some carrots, just getting excited because they put the potato in the ground and the black dirt, and now there's potatoes they're going to harvest. That kindness to the earth and the kindness to yourself. So one of the other wisdoms, and I just decided to really these are my elders, so I'm just sharing because I'm still working on these. So the other, the third value is around respect, respect for others, and so I want to share. My mother said something the other day, and it has to do with respect, because she always, when she's telling me something serious, she always says Nellie, because she calls me Nellie. She said, Nellie, sometimes you can't tell people what they don't know. So I've been thinking about that, because respect is when you allow someone to come to their own realizations. When you allow someone the freedom and the space to get to learn it themselves. And she'll always say things like, "You can't run in front of your kids or run in front of someone, making it easy and making it soft for them. You know that you have to allow them to become independent and have that respect so that they can have their own learnings." And so I think about, this respect for others. And I had shared on another power hour some of the, the Maslow teachings, but this respect. And when we begin to go out into the world, and when we're teaching our children, that respect is, I think it's innate. I think we have respect, and like one of the lessons, and this is like the wisdom that our old people used to do, is that they would just send us out as kids. You can come back and eat, but they'd send you out, and you'd be out in the woods all day. And then sometimes they'd say, "Okay, I want you to watch those birds, watch those robins, or watch, or watch, just watch." And then when you come back, they'd say, "What did you learn?" So sometimes, that skill of being observant and going out, we have to give that respect. We have to ourselves hold ourselves accountable in giving respect, and helping. It's even helping elders that need help. But I thought about this the other day, when my mom wanted to get down on her knee and hold up her sign. I said, "Well, Mom, do you want to do it outside or inside?" And so it was blowing outside, but on the inside, when she was trying to get back up, and but what I've learned, okay, so this is the wisdom. What I've learned is, don't help her unless she asks you for help. Let her take care. And so respect is, let people have that space and time to learn the lesson. So she actually, like, wasn't crawling, but she got up and got, leverage of her bed to get up. And what I was thinking to myself, I'm respecting, because I want her to have her independence as long as she can. And so when we're in this realization, of some of the racial tension right now, I was thinking, we gotta have respect for the ventilation of some of the rage and some of the despair and some of the grief. We have to create that space, and we have to allow it, and then we have to take action. So that respect for others is, we have to take action, and that action may be something. It's like a giant elephant. How do you eat a giant elephant one bite at a time? And so that respect is just an incredible lesson and a value that we have to dialogue and that we have to practice. So that again, I better look. I'm One of the things, the beauty of this time during this pandemic is, I don't like to pay attention to clocks. So, but since I only have an hour, and I want to share some of these wisdoms with you. And on the back, and I'll attempt, spirituality is Atsimoi Gani. That's how you say it in our language. And then kindness to others is Kimi Pi Pitsuni. And then respect for others is Inakitsi Tsini. And then the fourth thing that is of value is the purpose for being there. And so think about that, when think about your intentions of the purpose for being there. Like the purpose we're staying home is because we value life. we value our elders, we value our vulnerability, and we value our own life. So that's the reason a lot of us are staying home. But think about when you're from now on, there is going to be a time we are going to return to a different normalcy. When we return to that, think about when you go to things, what's your purpose for being there? I was, we were all just missing, we're not going to have our powwows. We're not going to have some of our ceremonies. We're not going to have that. So think about what is the purpose that you're being there. And I'll talk an example. One of our elders didn't pass away from COVID, but had a heart attack, and it was a man that was highly respected. So it was one of the social distancing funerals, and so that's my purpose. And I was thinking to myself, because I could just stay home, but I thought, no, I gotta go there. So I went not in the church with everyone, but I went in the grave site, and I went and parked up on the hill. And as I was parked up on the hill, I lit my sweet grass and I was saying my prayers, because my purpose was to respect the legacy of his life when he was alive. And, you know, his the man that he was, and how kind he was, and how he helped with many things with my own house, my septic tank. He helped many men with their salaries. He just helped so in so many ways. But my purpose for going there was to pay respect to his legacy. So that's like an example. So begin to think about, what is your purpose for being there in the places. And so even now that we're all virtual, start to say, why am I on this Zoom? Why am I on this Skype? Why am I on Facebook even? Or why am I going on Instagram? What is my purpose for being there? What is the purpose for being there? Is it spreading some of these values of kindness, of respecting? Or is so really examine. That's another piece of wisdom. The other, and I refer, because I just want to share with you, the fifth thing, and this has to do with some self-actualization. On this fifth value, it says just to be Blackfoot, but the way that you would use that for yourself is to become your authentic self, your true self of who you were intended to be. And that discovery comes with, I think, rites of passage. And I'll just describe, from the time, we have rites of passage from our Indian name, from the first time we walk, from puberty, when we go from being a girl to a woman, a boy to a man. All of these self-actualization, to have pride, and to have the medicine of confidence in who you are, that is something that we should all aspire to. Dr. Sidney Stone Brown, who was also, if you want to go back, who was also one of our elders that spoke with us around the transformation from greed to self-actualization. That is just not only a really good book, but a really good way to think about, who are you really? Who do you belong to? And sometimes, and I was thinking, one of the gifts, a lot of us are starting to think, ask questions, like, what is the genealogy? Who were your grandparents? What was their experience? Who were your great grandparents? What was their experience? And then you begin to, that's that ancestral knowledge. You begin to see who you belong to, and that's who you have to be. So that, it's the challenge is, who are you when you're Hopi? Who are you when you're Cree? Who are you when you're Navajo? who are you when you're Maori? Who are you, when and so in that I wanted to one of the stories I wanted to share with you, because in this wisdom that we're acquiring, I wanted to just share a short story of when I was called to go to Peru. And when I went to when I had had a dream about Peru. And so dreams, a lot of times this wisdom will come into your dreams. I had a dream that I was supposed to go pray with some rocks in Peru. That's how it started. I had always wanted to, so I knew that rocks were at Machu Picchu. I hadn't been there. And when I went there, we had guides that were Quechan speaking. They were Peruvian, and I wanted to share one of the stories when we went to. We finally made it. Cusco means belly button, and then Ali Tatombo is about halfway up, and there's all structures of rock. The Inca had constructed these places. Around, they were rulers in the 1500s. So at Ali Tatombo, there's this entire mountain that you can't see the llama until you step back, but that's Ali Tatombo. And we were told that they had such control of the water that when the conquistadores first came, that when they came into that valley, they just actually released the water and drowned them all, drowned even their horses. Had the 35 years for them to still try to conquer their king. When we were at Machu Picchu, the guide there, and this is one of the things I think today I was praying about what I should share with you. Once he knew, once he had met me, we kind of got a different tour, and so he drew, he drew it with a stick in the dirt. He drew like a medicine wheel, and then he quartered it, and he was talking about that Cusco, there's that everything's laid out like this, and they're actually, it's about spirituality, and there's prayer in each of those quadrants, and Cusco is symbolically one of the quadrants, and that Ali Tatombo was a second, and that the third, Machu Picchu, was a place, and that the fourth place was still undiscovered, that it was still way back in the rainforest. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because he then began to he was talking about the Mayan calendar, and that every 26,000 years there's this cycle. And this wisdom, this wisdom of the universe and the Gakadoksi, the star people, our sun and our moon, he began to, and this is right before December 21st, 2012. So that was 8 years ago. And that's the reason I'm sharing this wisdom that I heard from this man. Was he said, when we go into the new cycle, when we go into that, we began that new 26,000 year cycle, he said it's very volatile, and it's also very special and sacred at the solstice and the equinox. And he says, you'll see from 2012 as we begin, and this is going to be, in that beginning of the new cycle, we'll have volatileness, we'll have, and he gave an example, and these are the examples he gave. He said, we'll have earthquakes, we'll have volcanoes erupt. He said, we'll have things like pandemics. And I'm just saying that because he said, so you have to get ready, because there's this new cycle of energy, and there's the solstice and the equinox, and our earth, and its cleansing of itself, and even in the water inside of our bodies, that we will be going through a volatileness. But not to worry, because that's necessary for us to return to a harmony. And that wisdom, that harmony will come. And so I just wanted to share that with you, because the other day I had to. I actually stopped watching the news. I get the recap, but I don't watch. I can't watch violence. I can't watch that screen time. It's and I can't watch things that I have no control over, and I'm more peaceful. So that's kind of, so I just wanted to share that part with you. I wanted to the topic is, the wisdom in our DNA and our healing. So a couple of the other areas that I wanted to speak to is everything comes in pairs. And so this, I was thinking about, a lot of people know me as, I take time to gather plants and to have plants, and that we had a friend, Brenda Olson, and her mother came down from Ontario, and I just remember the story of what she was telling us when we put medicines together, like, if you had flat cedar, you have sweet pine, or you have sage, or you have other kinds of medicine. She always told us that you always mix them in twos, in fours, in sixes, and in eights. She said, always, because things are, they grab onto each other, and they become, it's not one plus one, they become thousand. There's something in pairs. There's something of an equalness. So even that wisdom around things that come in pairs, we of course can think of, marriage. We can think of things that, there was two mountain lions hanging around here for a while, but they went up, and we, on one of our motion cameras, we were looking at, they were hanging out, and I think they were siblings. I think that the because siblings is the longest relationship you will have in your life. It's an unconditional love, and so that was a pairing, that came. But I was just, one of, I was, a friend was gonna fast for four days, and she sent a message, and so in that pairing, I was thinking I needed to, gift her, and so I sent it through the mail. It's been kind of interesting, like everybody's like sending medicine to each other in the mail. So one of the things, just think about now, because like, actually, we have all of this virtual world, but it's an amazing thing when you have, you go to your post office box, or your mail gets delivered, and you get those kind of gifts. I see my dog needs to come in, and since we're all staying at home, just gonna let him in. So I wanted to, share, just a, looking up at the time, just a couple other of these wisdoms that I think are in our DNA. But I was thinking, in epigenetics, one of the things that, there's this one epigenetic study that always just kind of infiltrates my thinking, and it had to do, because they have to do experiments not on humans, but they do experiments on, mice. And so one of the experiments was that they had this group of mice, and when they, would let them smell cherries, the smell cherry, they would shock these mice. And so that was the trauma that was introduced, and then they wanted to see if it was transferred in the DNA. So what they found with the offspring is that they never shocked them. They would only give them the smell of the cherries. And when they smelt the cherries, they would have, anxiety, and some, would have panic attacks when they smelt it, because in the DNA from what happened to their parents, it was also there. So think about that, um, one of and I guess it's kind of I've been listening to what people will say. They'll say, God, like here on our res, they'll say, I was just driving, and then all of a sudden through my car there was just the smell of sweetgrass. Or I was just somewhere and there was just this, I could feel the presence of something. And so that even that